The morning after my 70th birthday, I drove to Henderson and Walsh Hardware like I had every day since 1985. Same route, same NPR news on the radio, same travel mug of coffee in the cup holder, black, no sugar. It was a Tuesday in early October, and the sun was just starting to come up over Main Street. 6 o'clock in the morning. That had been my routine since 1985. Open the store at 6, make a fresh pot of coffee in the back office, check the inventory sheets, be ready when the contractors started arriving at 6:30. But that Tuesday, everything changed. I pulled into my usual parking spot behind the building, grabbed my coffee and my keys, the same keys Tom Walsh had handed me on our opening day 40 years ago. Heavy brass keys with a faded red tag that said Henderson. I'd carried them every single day since. I walked to the back door, slid the key into the lock. It didn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. The key went in, but it wouldn't catch. I pulled it out, looked at it. Same key, same lock. But something was wrong. My coffee was getting cold in my other hand. I set it down on the concrete step and tried the key again. Both hands this time, really pushing. The metal was cold against my palms. October morning, temperature maybe 45 degrees, and I could see my breath in the air. Still nothing. That's when I heard the sound. A power drill, coming from inside the store. I walked around to the front. The lights were on inside, bright fluorescent lights that made the front windows glow. Through the glass, I could see two men. One was Dylan Walsh, Tom's son, 40-something, wearing an expensive suit I knew he couldn't afford. The other man I didn't recognize. Older, maybe 60, also in a suit, briefcase on the counter. Lawyer, I thought immediately. They were measuring the space. Dylan had a tape measure stretched across the front counter. The other man was making notes on a yellow legal pad. And then I saw it. Two workers in coveralls were installing a new sign above the front door. The old sign, the one that had been there since 1985, was leaning against the wall. Henderson and Walsh Hardware, forest green letters, gold trim. Tom and I had picked out that sign together. We'd argued about the font for 3 days before we finally agreed. The new sign was bigger, brighter, modern LED backlighting. It said Walsh Hardware. Just Walsh, not Henderson. My name was gone. I stood there on the sidewalk. My coffee was back on the step behind the building, getting cold. My keys were in my hand, useless now, 40 years, every morning at 6. And just like that, I couldn't get into my own store anymore. I walked up to the front door, knocked on the glass. Dylan looked up, saw me. Our eyes met through the window. He smiled, not a friendly smile, not an apologetic smile, a satisfied smile. Then he turned back to the lawyer and kept talking, kept measuring, kept planning, like I wasn't there, like I'd never been there at all. I knocked again, harder this time. The lawyer glanced toward the door, said something to Dylan. Dylan shook his head. The lawyer shrugged and went back to his notes. They weren't going to let me in. I stood there for another minute, maybe 2. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, from something else, confusion, disbelief. And underneath all of that, a growing realization. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. Dylan had changed the locks on my store. He'd removed my name from the sign. He'd brought in a lawyer. And he was doing all of this the morning after my 70th birthday. I walked back to my car, got in, sat there with my hands on the steering wheel. Through the windshield, I could see the new sign going up, Walsh Hardware. The workers were securing the brackets, testing the lights. It looked professional, expensive, permanent. I thought about calling someone, Sarah, my daughter, Margaret, my neighbor, the police maybe, but I didn't move. I just sat there watching 2 men erase 40 years of my life, and I thought, how did I lose my own business? I sat in my car for another 10 minutes before I drove home. My hands were still shaking when I pulled into my driveway. My house is a ranch-style place in the suburbs. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. I've lived here for 32 years. My husband, not Tom, my actual husband, Robert, And I bought it when Sarah was little. Robert died 10 years ago. Heart attack, sudden. Tom helped me through that grief. We'd been business partners for 30 years by then. He understood loss. I unlocked my front door and went straight to the kitchen, made fresh coffee, sat down at the table, the same table where I'd been sitting the night before, blowing out 70 candles on the birthday cake Sarah had brought over. 70 years old. I didn't feel 70. I felt 45, maybe 50 on a bad day. But 70? That was supposed to be retirement, grandchildren, travel, peace. Instead, I was sitting at my kitchen table at 6:30 in the morning, locked out of my own business. I needed to call someone. But first, I needed to understand what was happening. Tom Walsh and I opened Henderson and Walsh Hardware in 1985. We were both 30 years old. We'd met at a trade show 2 years earlier. He was working for a supplier. I was managing inventory for a small hardware chain. We got to talking, realized we both wanted the same thing, our own store, partnership, equal stake, split the work, split the profits. We started with a handshake deal. Tom found the location on Main Street. I put up the down payment, $35,000. That was my inheritance from my parents. Everything they'd left me. Tom matched it with his savings. We opened in April. By summer, we were breaking even. By fall, we were profitable. 2 years later, we made it official. Partnership agreement. 50-50 ownership. Tom's name first, then mine. Henderson and Walsh Hardware. We filed it with the state. Had it notarized. Put a copy in the safe at the store and one in my file cabinet at home. Tom handled inventory and suppliers. I handled finances and customers. We both worked the floor. We both knew every nail, every bolt, every contractor who walked through the door. That store was ours, equally. Partners since opening day. Tom and I went through a lot together. Business loans when we needed to expand, the recession in 2008 when we almost went bankrupt. Tom's first heart attack 12 years ago. I covered his share of the mortgage for 18 months while he recovered. When I lost Robert, Tom was the one who kept the store running. When business was slow, I took no salary for 6 months so we could keep our employees. That's what partners do. You support each other. You weather the storms together. 6 months ago, Tom had another heart attack. This one killed him, 72 years old. He died at home. His doctor said it was quick, peaceful. The funeral was packed. Tom knew everyone in town. Contractors, suppliers, customers. The whole community showed up. Dylan was there too. I hadn't seen Dylan in years. Tom's only son. He'd grown up coming to the store on weekends when he was a kid, but he'd never wanted anything to do with the hardware business. He'd gone into corporate sales, moved away, got married, had kids. At the funeral, Dylan hugged me, told me how sorry he was, said he'd always admired the partnership his father and I had built. Then he asked if we could talk sometime soon. He was interested in the family business, wanted to understand how things worked. I thought he was being respectful, trying to honor his father's memory. Looking back now, I realize he was already planning this. Over the next few months, Dylan started showing up at the store. Once a week at first, then more often. He'd ask questions. How much inventory did we carry? What were our supplier relationships? Who handled the bookkeeping? He started talking about succession planning, suggesting that maybe I should think about retirement. I was getting older, he'd say. Didn't I want to slow down, enjoy my 70s? I told him I loved the work. I wasn't ready to retire. He'd smile, nod, then ask to see the books, review the accounts, look at the partnership agreement. A month ago, he asked where we kept the important documents. I showed him. There's a safe in the back office at the store, partnership agreement, business licenses, property deed, all the critical paperwork. I even told him the combination. I thought he was being responsible, trying to understand his father's legacy, preparing to help if I ever did decide to retire. I didn't see it. I didn't see what he was doing. My neighbor Margaret called me around 8 that morning. Margaret's 68, retired nurse. She lives 3 houses down. We've been in the same garden club for 15 years. She's the one who brings casseroles every time something goes wrong in the neighborhood. "Barb, I saw you leave early this morning," she said. "Everything okay? You didn't have your usual lights on at the store when I drove past." I told her what happened, the locks, the sign. Dylan. There was a long silence on the phone. "Oh, honey," Margaret said quietly, "you need to call Sarah, and you need to find your copy of that partnership agreement, right now." She was right. I called my daughter. Sarah teaches high school English. She's 45, married to Mike. They have 2 girls, Emily, who's 8, and Sophie, who's 11. Sarah inherited my organizational skills. She has a color-coded calendar and makes lists for everything. She's also fiercely protective of me, sometimes too protective. She worries I can't handle things on my own. "Mom," she answered on the first ring, "what's wrong? You never call before 9. I told her about the store, the locks, Dylan. "That bastard," Sarah said, not loudly, just flat, factual. "I'm coming over. Don't do anything until I get there." She arrived 20 minutes later with her tote bag full of papers and her reading glasses pushed up on her head. We sat at the kitchen table. I made more coffee. "Where's your copy of the partnership agreement?" Sarah asked. "File cabinet in my office." We went down the hall to my home office. Small room, desk, file cabinet, bookshelves with 40 years of hardware catalogs. Sarah opened the file cabinet, found the folder labeled Business Partnership. It was empty. We checked every other folder, every drawer. Gone. My copy of the partnership agreement was gone. Sarah looked at me. "When was the last time you checked this?" I tried to remember. "I don't know. Months? Maybe a year?" "When was Dylan last in your house?" My stomach dropped. 2 weeks ago, Dylan had stopped by, said he wanted to drop off some of Tom's old things, photos, a watch. He'd stayed for coffee. I'd shown him around, told him stories about his father. I'd given him a spare key to my house months earlier. For emergencies, I'd said, in case something happened and I needed help. "He took them," I said. "He came into my house and stole my documents." Sarah pulled out her phone, started typing notes, making a list. She gets that from me. "Okay," she said, her teacher voice, calm, organized. "Here's what we do. First, we go to the bank. You have a safety deposit box, right? Please tell me you have a safety deposit box." I did. Tom and I had rented one years ago. We'd each put a copy of the partnership agreement there, just in case. "Good," Sarah said. "We get that. Then we call a lawyer. This is theft. This is fraud. Dylan can't just take your business." But even as she said it, I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. Could he? I thought about Tom, how he'd sometimes introduce the store as my place instead of our place. How he'd tell people, "Barb helps me run things," rather than, "Barb is my partner." Small things, casual language, nothing malicious, just habit. Dylan had grown up hearing that, watching that. Maybe he genuinely believed the store was his father's, that I was just an employee, a helper, not a true partner, or maybe he knew exactly what he was doing and he just didn't care. I looked at the empty folder in Sarah's hands. Decades of partnership, equal ownership from day one, documented, notarized, filed with the state, and now someone had broken into my home and stolen the proof. I took a breath, picked up my car keys. "Let's go to the bank," I said. The bank opened at 9. Sarah and I were waiting in the parking lot at 8:50. We sat in my car. I had my coffee, my 3rd cup of the morning. Sarah had brought a legal pad and was making notes, questions to ask, documents to request. She was in full teacher mode, organized, methodical. "When we get inside," she said, "we ask for the safety deposit box first. Then we need to talk to the branch manager about the business accounts, see if Dylan's made any changes." I nodded. My mind was somewhere else. 2 weeks ago. Dylan in my kitchen, sitting at my table, drinking coffee, looking so much like Tom, that same jawline, those same blue eyes. I told him stories about his father, showed him around the house, my office, the file cabinet. He'd asked where I kept the important documents, business papers, legal things. I'd shown him. For emergencies, I'd said, in case something happens to me. He'd nodded, smiled. Thanks, Barb. That's really helpful. I just want to make sure I know where everything is. Just in case. Just in case. He'd planned this. All of it. The sympathy at the funeral, the questions about the business, the visits to my home. He'd been setting this up for months, and I'd helped him do it. Mom. Sarah touched my arm. It's 9. Let's go. Inside, the bank was cold. Too much air conditioning. The branch manager's name was Kevin Chen. I'd known him for 15 years. He handled all the business accounts for Henderson and Walsh Hardware. Mrs. Henderson. Kevin stood up when he saw us. His smile faded when he looked at my face. Is everything all right? I need to access my safety deposit box, I said, and then I need to talk to you about the business accounts. The safety deposit box was in the vault. Kevin brought it to a private room, small space, table, 2 chairs. Sarah stood behind me as I opened the box. Partnership agreement, right where it should be. The original from 1987, signed by both Tom and me, notarized, filed with the state business registry. I pulled it out, held it in my hands. The paper was yellowed, slightly brittle, but the words were clear. Henderson and Walsh Hardware, partnership agreement, equal ownership, 50-50. I looked at Sarah. She nodded. At least we had this. At least Dylan hadn't found this copy. Put it in your bag, I told Sarah. Don't let it out of your sight. Back in Kevin's office, I explained what had happened. The changed locks, the new sign. Dylan. Kevin's face went pale. Mrs. Henderson, he said slowly, I need to show you something. He turned his computer monitor toward us, the business account for Henderson and Walsh Hardware. I'd been reviewing these statements every month since we opened. Revenue from sales, payments to suppliers, payroll, standard operating expenses. But the last 3 months looked different. 3 transfers, each one for $10,000, all to an account I didn't recognize. What is this? I asked. Kevin scrolled. Down. Clicked on the account details. The transfers went to an account under Dylan Walsh's name, personal account. $30,000, Sarah said quietly. He stole $30,000. I stared at the numbers on the screen. 10,000 in March, 10,000 in April, 10,000 in May. While I was grieving Tom, while I was trying to keep the business running, while I was showing Dylan where we kept the documents because I trusted him, he'd been stealing from me the whole time. Mrs. Henderson? Kevin's voice pulled me back. Are you all right? I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. Kevin cleared his throat. Mrs. Henderson, 4 months ago, Dylan Walsh came in with power of attorney documents. He said his father had given him POA before he passed away. He wanted to be added as a co-signer on the business account. For estate purposes, he said, to help manage things during the transition. I didn't authorize that, I said. My voice was steady, calm, but my hands were shaking under the table. The POA documents appeared legitimate, Kevin said. They were notarized. I had no reason to question them. Tom had dementia at the end, I said. Mild cognitive impairment. His doctor diagnosed it last year. He wasn't competent to sign power of attorney documents. Kevin looked uncomfortable. I didn't know that. When were these documents dated? Sarah asked. Kevin clicked through his files. March 15th. 4 months ago. 2 months before Tom died. Right around the time Tom's doctor had told me we needed to start thinking about memory care options. Dylan had used his father's illness, exploited it, got Tom to sign documents when he couldn't understand what he was agreeing to, and then Dylan had used those documents to steal from the business. I need copies of everything, I said. The power of attorney documents, all the bank statements showing those transfers, every transaction Dylan made on this account. Kevin nodded. Of course. I'll print them now. He left the office. Sarah and I sat there in silence. I thought about Tom, how tired he'd been at the end, how confused. He'd forget customers' names, mix up orders. One day, he'd asked me what year we opened the store. When I told him 1985, he'd look surprised, like he'd lost 40 years somewhere in his mind. Dylan had taken advantage of that, his own father. Kevin came back with a thick folder, bank statements, transfer records, the power of attorney documents. I looked at the POA. Tom's signature was shaky, unsteady. Not like the confident signature I'd seen him use for 40 years. "Kevin," I said, "is there anything you can do? Can you reverse these transfers?" He shook his head. "Not without a court order. Legally, Dylan had authority to make those transfers. The POA gave him co-signing privileges. Even though Tom wasn't competent when he signed it? That's a matter for the courts to decide. I'm sorry, Mrs. Henderson. I really am. But you're going to need a lawyer." Sarah and I drove home in silence. The folder of bank documents sat on her lap. The partnership agreement was in her bag. Back at my kitchen table, we spread everything out. Sarah had her legal pad. I had fresh coffee. "Okay," Sarah said. "So we know 3 things. 1. Dylan has forged or improperly obtained power of attorney documents. 2. He's stolen $30,000 from the business account. 3. He's changed the locks and removed your name from the store." I stared at the documents. 40 years of partnership, 40 years of equal ownership, and Dylan thought he could just take it. "We need a lawyer," Sarah said. "A good one. Someone who specializes in business disputes. Elder law, maybe." I nodded. But I was thinking about something else. Margaret had mentioned her son worked with a law firm in the city. Corporate law, estate planning, that kind of thing. Maybe he'd know someone. My phone buzzed. I picked it up. Email from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line, legal notice. I opened it. Letter from a law office. Dylan's lawyer. "Dear Mrs. Henderson, this office represents Mr. Dylan Walsh regarding Henderson and Walsh Hardware. It has come to our attention that you have been making claims of ownership regarding the above-mentioned business. Please be advised that following the death of Mr. Thomas Walsh, sole proprietor, ownership of Walsh Hardware has transferred to his heir, Mr. Dylan Walsh. Any further claims of ownership or attempts to access the property will be considered trespassing and will result in legal action. We strongly advise you to cease and desist all contact with the business and to refrain from making false claims about your relationship to the deceased proprietor. Sincerely, Bradford and Associates." I read it twice. Then I handed the phone to Sarah. She read it. Her face went red. "Sole proprietor?" she said. "False claims? This is insane." I looked at the partnership agreement on my table, the bank statements showing my name as co-owner for 40 years, the tax returns I'd signed, the lease I'd co-signed, the loans I'd taken out, 40 years of documentation, 40 years of proof, and Dylan's lawyer was calling me a liar. I took a breath, set down my coffee cup, looked at my daughter. "Call Margaret's son," I said. "Get that lawyer's name. I'm not walking away from this." Sarah pulled out her phone, started dialing. I looked at the photo on my desk. Tom and me on opening day, 1985, both of us 30 years old, holding the sign we'd painted ourselves, partners. "Tom," I whispered, "what did Dylan do to you?" Margaret's son gave us a name, Linda Martinez, elder law attorney. She specialized in business disputes, estate litigation, and financial abuse cases involving seniors. Sarah called her office that afternoon, explained the situation. The receptionist said Linda could see us the next morning, 10 o'clock. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about Dylan's lawyer's email, sole proprietor, false claims, 40 years erased with a few legal phrases. At 9:30 the next morning, Sarah and I drove to Linda's office. It was in a 3-story brick building downtown, professional, clean, the kind of place that charged by the hour. The receptionist led us to a conference room. Glass walls, modern furniture, too much air conditioning. I pulled my cardigan tighter and wished I'd brought a heavier jacket. Linda Martinez walked in at exactly 10 o'clock. She was maybe 52, petite, dark hair with a gray streak, sharp features. She wore a navy suit and carried a coffee travel mug. Her handshake was firm. "Mrs. Henderson, I'm Linda Martinez. Sarah briefed me on the phone yesterday. I'm sorry you're going through this." She sat down across from us, opened her laptop. "Why don't you start from the beginning? Tell me everything." I told her about Tom, the partnership, 40 years of equal ownership, his death 6 months ago, Dylan showing up at the funeral, the questions, the visits to my home, the stolen documents. Then I told her about the locks, the sign, the bank transfers. Linda took notes, asked questions. Her coffee mug sat beside her laptop, forgotten. When I finished, she looked at me. "Do you have documentation? Partnership agreement? Tax returns? Anything showing your ownership?" Sarah pulled out her folder. The partnership agreement from the safety deposit box, the bank statements showing Dylan's transfers, the power of attorney documents. Linda spread them across the table, started reading. She read the partnership agreement first, slowly, carefully. She made notes in the margins, circled sections. After 10 minutes, she looked up. "This is ironclad," she said. 1987, signed by both parties, notarized, filed with the state business registry. It explicitly states 50-50 ownership, equal partnership. And look at this. She pointed to a clause. Succession rights. In the event of one partner's death, the surviving partner has right of first refusal to purchase the deceased partner's share at fair market value. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means Dylan has no automatic claim to his father's share. You, as the surviving partner, have the legal right to buy Tom's half of the business if you choose, or you can negotiate how to proceed. But Dylan can't just take it. This document gives you significant protection." I felt something loosen in my chest. Relief, validation. "But he changed the locks," I said. "He removed my name from the sign." "Illegally," Linda said. "Mrs. Henderson, you are documented as a 50% owner. You have partnership rights, property rights. Dylan locking you out is illegal. We can file an emergency motion to restore your access immediately." Sarah squeezed my hand under the table. Linda turned to the bank statements, reviewed the transfers, read the power of attorney documents. Her expression hardened. "This POA is questionable," she said. "You mentioned Tom had dementia?" "Mild cognitive impairment. Diagnosed last year. It got worse toward the end." "Was he under a doctor's care?" "Yes, Dr. Ramirez. He was Tom's primary physician for 20 years. Linda made a note. "We'll need medical records. If we can establish that Tom wasn't competent when he signed this POA, it's voidable, and that makes Dylan's bank transfers unauthorized, potentially embezzlement." "Can we get the money back?" Sarah asked. "With a court order, yes, but it's going to take time, and it's going to require litigation." Linda looked at me. "Mrs. Henderson, this is a strong case. You have documentation. You have a solid partnership agreement. You have 40 years of tax returns, I assume?" I nodded. "Good. Dylan's lawyer can claim whatever he wants, but the facts are on your side. However," she paused, "I need you to understand something. Dylan isn't going to give up easily. He's invested in this takeover. He's already changed the locks, contacted a lawyer, made public moves. People like that don't back down without a fight. This could get expensive, and it could get ugly." I thought about the $30,000 Dylan had already taken, my savings, my retirement account. I'd lived frugally my whole life, saved carefully, but legal fees could drain that quickly. Linda must have seen something in my face. "Let me be clear," she said. "I think you'll win. The law is on your side, but you need to be prepared for a battle." "I'm prepared," I said. Linda smiled, small, sad. "Good. Because there's something you should know. About 5 years ago, my mother was financially abused by her brother, my uncle. He convinced her to sign over power of attorney. Then he emptied her bank accounts, took her house. She lost everything before anyone realized what was happening. "I'm sorry," I said. I couldn't help her. Conflict of interest, family case. But I've been taking cases like yours ever since. Elder financial abuse makes me angry, and Dylan Walsh's tactics make me very angry. She closed her laptop. "I want this case, and I'm going to fight like hell for you." Sarah and I left her office with a plan. Linda would file an emergency motion to restore my access to the store and freeze the business accounts. She'd request Tom's medical records to challenge the POA. She'd send a formal response to Dylan's lawyer's cease and desist letter. And she wanted one more thing. "Do you have tax returns?" she'd asked. "All 40 years? I did. Our CPA, Martin Chen, Kevin's uncle actually, had been doing our taxes since 1986. He kept everything. "Get them," Linda had said. "Every single year. I want to establish a paper trail showing continuous co-ownership for 4 decades. Dylan's lawyer says Tom was the sole proprietor. We'll bury him in documentation proving otherwise." That afternoon I called Martin, explained what happened. He was shocked, furious. "Barb, I've been filing partnership returns for you and Tom for almost 40 years. Every single year you're listed as a 50% owner. Every single year. This is absurd. Can you send copies to my lawyer?" "I'll do better than that," Martin said. "I'll testify. I'll bring every return, every piece of documentation, and I'll explain exactly what partnership taxation looks like. Dylan's lawyer won't know what hit him." I thanked him, hung up, looked at Sarah. "We have a case," I said. Sarah nodded, but she looked worried. "Mom, Linda said this could get expensive. How much do you have in savings?" I didn't want to think about it, but I had to be realistic. "Enough," I said, "for now." That night I couldn't sleep again. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, went through old emails, files I'd saved over the years, business correspondence, supplier contracts, customer communications, and then I found it. An email from Tom, sent to Dylan 8 months before Tom died, before the dementia got really bad, when he could still think clearly. The subject line was "the store." I opened it. "Dylan, I know you're going through a hard time financially. The divorce, the job loss, I want to help, but I need you to understand something. The store is Barb's as much as mine. We built it together, equal partners, 50-50. Always has been, always will be. When I'm gone, you need to respect that. She's my partner, not my employee. Don't forget that. Whatever you're thinking about doing, talk to Barb first. She has rights, she has ownership. I mean it. Dad." Dylan's response was short. "Whatever, Dad. I get it." I read the email 3 times. Tom's voice, clear, protective. He'd known. Somehow he'd known Dylan might try something, and he'd tried to stop it. I saved the email, printed it, put it in a folder with all the other documents. Then I sent it to Linda with a message. "Found this. Does it help?" She responded within 5 minutes. "Yes, this is huge. Tom's own words establishing your partnership, his explicit warning to Dylan. This destroys Dylan's narrative. Get some sleep, Barb. We're going to win this." I sat back in my chair, looked at Tom's photo on my desk. Opening day, 1985. Both of us so young, so hopeful. "Thank you," I whispered. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sad. Tom would have been horrified by what Dylan was doing, using his father's death to steal, exploiting his father's memory to justify it. This wasn't the legacy Tom wanted. My phone buzzed. Text message. Unknown number. "Barb, this is Dylan. We need to talk tonight, your place. 11 p.m. Don't bring Sarah. Don't bring your lawyer. Just us. Trust me. You want to hear what I have to say." I stared at the message. 11 p.m. My house. Just us. I forwarded the text to Linda. Her response was immediate. "Do not meet him alone. If he shows up, call 911. This is intimidation. Document everything." I looked at the clock. 10:15 p.m., 45 minutes. I picked up my phone. Called Sarah. "Mom, Dylan's coming here in 45 minutes. Linda said not to meet him alone. Can you come over?" "I'm on my way." I hung up, made fresh coffee, and waited. Sarah arrived at 10:30. She brought Mike with her. My son-in-law is a big man, 6'3", former college linebacker. He didn't say much, just stood in the kitchen with his arms crossed, looking at the door. "If Dylan tries anything," Mike said quietly, "I'm calling the cops." "Linda said to call them anyway if he shows up," Sarah added. She was pacing, nervous energy. "This is intimidation, Mom. He's trying to scare you." "I know," I said, "but I want to hear what he has to say." At 11 o'clock exactly, headlights swept across my front window. A car pulled into my driveway. Expensive engine, Dylan's BMW. I opened the door before he could knock. Dylan stood on my porch, same expensive suit from yesterday. He looked tired, stressed, but he smiled when he saw me. "Barb, thanks for seeing me." He glanced past me into the house, saw Sarah and Mike in the kitchen. His smile faded. "I asked you to come alone." "My daughter and son-in-law are staying," I said. "You can say whatever you need to say in front of them." Dylan hesitated. Then he stepped inside. I left the door open. Fresh air, escape route, just in case. We stood in my living room. Dylan didn't sit down. Neither did I. "Look," Dylan said. "I know this has been difficult. The locks, the sign. I should have talked to you first. That was wrong." "Yes," I said. "It was. But here's the thing, Barb. You need to be realistic. My father built that store. It was his vision, his investment. You helped, sure. I'm not saying you didn't contribute, but it was Dad's store. Everyone knew that." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "I was his partner," I said. 50-50, for 40 years. "On paper, maybe," Dylan said. "But come on, you were the bookkeeper. You handled the cash register. Dad ran the business. He made the decisions. He dealt with the suppliers. It was his name that mattered." "Henderson and Walsh," I said. "Both names. Equal partners." Dylan shook his head. "You're what? 70 now? 71? You don't need this stress. You should be retired, enjoying your grandkids, traveling. Whatever people do at your age." "At your age. I love the work," I said. "I'm not ready to retire." "But that's the problem," Dylan said. His voice was patient, like he was explaining something to a child. "You can't run that store alone. You need me. And honestly, Barb, I'm willing to be generous here. I'm willing to make this easy for you." He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket, handed it to me. I opened it. Check. Made out to Barbara Henderson. $50,000. "That's yours," Dylan said. "Cash. Today. You sign a release, walk away, and this is over. You can retire comfortably. Buy yourself something nice. Take a cruise. Live your life." I stared at the check. $50,000. The store was worth at least $800,000, probably more. I owned half, $400,000 minimum, and Dylan was offering me $50,000. "This is insulting," I said quietly. "It's generous," Dylan corrected. "You're not listed on the deed, Barb. Dad owned the property, he paid the mortgage. Legally, you've got a claim for maybe some back wages, severance, but that's it. My lawyer says you don't have a leg to stand on." "Your lawyer is wrong." Dylan's patience was wearing thin. I could see it in his face. "Listen to me," he said. "You fight this, you're going to lose. And you're going to spend every penny you have on legal fees. Is that what you want? To be 75 and broke because you were too stubborn to accept a fair offer?" "Fair?" Sarah stepped forward. "You're offering her $50,000 for 40 years of work? For half ownership of a business worth almost $1 million? "Stay out of this," Dylan said. Not loudly, but there was an edge to his voice now. "This is between me and Barb." "Actually," Sarah said, "it's between you and my mother's lawyer, Linda Martinez. I'm sure you've heard from her by now." Dylan's jaw tightened. Yeah, he said. I got her letter, emergency motion to restore access. Claims about the POA, it's all garbage. She's wasting everyone's time. The POA you got Dad to sign when he had dementia? Sarah asked. That POA? My father was competent, Dylan said. He knew exactly what he was signing. His doctor says otherwise. Dylan turned back to me, ignored Sarah. Barb, he said, his voice softer now, almost gentle. Look, I know you and Dad were close. I know you worked hard, but you have to understand something. That store is my inheritance, my father's legacy. It's all I have left of him, and you're trying to take it away from me. I thought about Tom, how proud he'd been of the store, how he'd loved coming in early, making coffee, talking to the contractors, helping people fix things, how he'd told Margaret to protect me, how he'd emailed Dylan warning him to respect the partnership. Tom wanted you to respect my ownership, I said. He sent you an email 8 months before he died. He told you the store was mine as much as his. Dylan's face went blank, then recovered. I don't know what you're talking about. I have the email, I said. I found it last night. Tom wrote to you, explicitly. He said the store was ours, equal partnership. He told you not to forget that. For the first time, Dylan looked rattled. That doesn't prove anything, he said. Dad was confused. He was sick. He didn't know what he was saying. He wrote it 8 months before he died, I said. Before the dementia got bad, he knew exactly what he was saying. Dylan stared at me. The patience was gone now, the friendly tone, the smile. You know what? He said. I tried to be nice. I tried to make this easy. But you want to fight? Fine. We'll fight. And when you lose, and you will lose, you'll get nothing. Not 50,000, not a penny. You'll be broke and humiliated, and everyone in this town will know you tried to steal from a dead man's son. I need you to leave now, I said. You're making a mistake. Get out of my house. Dylan looked at Mike. Mike stepped forward. Not threateningly, just present. Dylan walked to the door, turned back. Last chance, Barb. Goodbye, Dylan. He left. His BMW pulled out of my driveway. Taillights disappeared down the street. I closed the door, locked it. Stood there with my back against the wood. Sarah came over, put her hand on my arm. Mom, are you okay? I nodded, but I wasn't sure. $50,000. That was a lot of money. I could take it, walk away, be done with this whole mess. I was 70 years old. How much fight did I have left? Mike had gone to check the windows, make sure they were locked. Sarah was watching me, worried. Mom, she said quietly, if you want to take the money. I don't, I said. But if you're tired, if this is too much. Sarah, I looked at my daughter. He's counting on me giving up. That's what men like him do. They intimidate. They wear you down. They make you feel like fighting isn't worth it. And then they win. Not because they're right, but because we're too tired to keep fighting. Sarah's eyes were shining. Don't let him do that to me, I said. Don't let him make me into someone who gives up. She hugged me, tight. After they left, I sat in my living room. The house was quiet. I thought about what Dylan had said. At your age, too old, too tired, too weak to fight. I walked down the hall to my bedroom, opened my dresser drawer, found the small wooden box I kept there, jewelry, old watches, keepsakes, and underneath everything, the original keys Tom had given me on our opening day, 1985, April 15th. We'd stood outside the store together. He'd handed me the keys. Partners, he'd said, 50-50, forever. I held those keys in my hand, heavy brass, worn smooth from 40 years of use. Before Dylan changed the locks, these were mine. He didn't get to take this. I sat on the edge of my bed, squeezed those old keys until my knuckles went white, and I thought, I'm not done. I pulled out my phone, called Linda. She answered on the second ring. Barb, are you okay? Did Dylan show up? He showed up, I said. He offered me $50,000 to walk away. What did you say? I told him to leave. Linda, I want you to file everything. The emergency motion, the challenge to the POA, everything. We're not settling. We're fighting. Linda was quiet for a moment, then, good. I'll file first thing tomorrow morning. I hung up, looked at the keys in my hand. 40 years I'd open that door every morning. Dylan thought I was too old, too tired to fight back. He was wrong. Linda filed the emergency motion the next morning. By noon, Dylan's lawyer had responded with a counter motion. By the end of the day, we had a court date scheduled 2 weeks out. The judge ordered mediation first. Standard procedure in business disputes. The store stayed closed. Dylan had the keys. I had a legal claim. But until the court sorted it out, the doors stayed locked. No revenue, no customers. Just a dark storefront on Main Street with a new sign I hated. 3 days after Linda filed, my phone rang. Dylan's lawyer. Mrs. Henderson, this is Paul Bradford. I represent Dylan Walsh. I'd like to discuss a settlement. I put him on speaker. Linda was sitting across from me at my kitchen table. Go ahead, I said. Mr. Walsh recognizes this situation has been stressful for everyone involved. He'd like to resolve this amicably. He's prepared to offer you $150,000 cash. You'd sign a release, relinquish any claims to the business, and we'd all move forward. $150,000, 3 times his first offer. Linda muted the phone, looked at me. He's scared, she said quietly. The emergency hearing is in 2 days. He knows the judge is going to review the partnership agreement. He's trying to settle before that happens. I unmuted. I'll need to discuss with my attorney, I said. Of course, Bradford said. But I should mention, this offer expires in 48 hours. If we go to mediation, the offer is off the table. He hung up. Linda leaned back in her chair. $150 is significant money, Barb. That's your legal fees covered, plus some. You could walk away clean. But the business is worth $800,000 minimum. You own 50%. That's $400,000. He's offering you less than half what you're entitled to. I looked at the number she'd written down. $150,000. I could retire on that. Live comfortably. Be done with this whole nightmare. What do you think I should do? I asked. Linda was quiet for a moment. I think you should do what feels right, she said. If you want to take the money and move on, I support that. But if you want to fight for what's actually yours, I think we can win. I thought about it all night. Sarah called. Margaret stopped by with a casserole. Neither of them told me what to do. They just listened. At 7 the next morning, I called Linda. Turn down the offer, I said. We're going to mediation. 2 days later, the emergency hearing happened. The judge reviewed Linda's motion, looked at the partnership agreement, ordered the locks changed back, ordered the business accounts frozen until mediation resolved ownership. Dylan had to give me a key. Linda called me after the hearing. Small victory, she said. You can access the store again, but Dylan still has his key too, and the accounts are frozen. Neither of you can touch the money until this is settled. That afternoon, I drove to the store, used my new key, opened the door for the first time in 3 weeks. The lights were off. The shelves looked dusty. Mail was piled up behind the counter, but it was still there. Still mine. I walked through the aisles. 40 years of inventory, relationships with suppliers, customer loyalty. This was what Tom and I had built. I wasn't giving it up. But 3 days later, my phone rang again. Different number. Mrs. Henderson, this is Jack Morrison. I've been shopping at your store for 20 years. I'm a contractor. I drove by yesterday. Is it true you're closed? Temporarily, I said. There's a legal dispute. We're working it out. Oh, he sounded disappointed. Because I need to place a big order, renovation project. Normally I'd come to you, but if you're closed, I'll have to go to Home Depot. My stomach sank. How big? $15,000, maybe more. $15,000 in revenue. Gone. Over the next week, more calls came. Contractors, regular customers, people asking when we'd reopen, saying they'd have to shop elsewhere if we stayed closed. 40 years of customer relationships slipping away. Sarah came over one evening, found me at my kitchen table with a calculator. Bills spread out in front of me. "Mom?" "The store's been closed for a month," I said. "No revenue, but the bills keep coming. Property tax, utilities, insurance. The accounts are frozen, so I can't access business funds to pay them. I've been covering them from my personal savings." "How much?" "12,000 so far. Linda's fees are another 15,000. I've got maybe 40,000 left in savings before I'm tapped out." Sarah sat down. "Mom, if you need money..." "I'm not taking money from you and Mike," I said. "You have the girls, college funds to think about." "But I'm fine," I said, "for now." But I wasn't fine, and we both knew it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table at 3 a.m, cold coffee, documents everywhere, legal motions, financial statements, bills. What if I lost? What if I spent everything I had and the court ruled against me? At 70, I'd have nothing. No business, no savings, no way to start over. Dylan was counting on that. Counting on the legal fees and the closed store and the mounting bills to break me, to force me to settle for whatever scraps he offered. I thought about Tom, what he would say. I looked at his photo on my desk. Opening day, 1985. "I'm scared," I whispered. The sun started coming up, dawn breaking through my kitchen window. I made fresh coffee, sat there, watched the light change, and I thought, I've come this far. Margaret called at 8. "Barb, I'm organizing a coffee meeting, just a few of us from the neighborhood. We want to help. Can you come over this afternoon?" I went. Margaret's living room, 6 women from our garden club, all retired, all in their 60s and 70s. They'd heard what was happening. Word travels fast in small towns. "We want to testify," Margaret said, "at the mediation. I can talk about what Tom told me. Eleanor knew you and Tom for 30 years. She'll testify about the partnership. Jane's husband was a contractor who shopped at your store for decades." I looked at these women, my neighbors, my friends. "You'd do that?" "Of course," Margaret said. "Barb, we've watched you run that store for 40 years. We know what you built. Dylan doesn't get to erase that." The mediation was scheduled for the following week. Linda said it would be intense. Both sides would present their case, evidence, witnesses. Then the mediator would try to broker a settlement. "If mediation fails," Linda said, "we go to court, full litigation. That could take months, maybe years, and it'll be expensive." 3 days before mediation, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Barb, it's Jack Morrison again, the contractor. I hate to tell you this, but I drove past your store this morning. There's a big sign in the window. Closing out inventory, 50% off everything." My heart stopped. "What?" "Dylan's in there. Looks like he's liquidating. Customers everywhere. Shelves are getting emptied." I hung up, called Linda. "He can't do that," I said. "The accounts are frozen. The judge ordered..." "He's not touching the accounts," Linda said grimly. "He's selling inventory, cash sales. He'll claim he's entitled to manage business operations. By the time we can stop him, the store will be empty." I drove to the store, parked across the street, watched through the window. Dylan was behind the counter, ringing up sales, smiling. Customers were everywhere. Contractors I'd known for years, loading up on inventory at half price. My inventory, 40 years of supplier relationships, stock I'd carefully selected, being sold off in a fire sale. I sat in my car and watched. Couldn't move. Couldn't think. My phone buzzed. Text from Linda. "CPA found something. Dylan commissioned a business valuation report 6 months ago, when Tom was still alive. He'd been planning this takeover all along. 6 months ago, before Tom died, before the dementia got really bad, Dylan had been planning this for months, maybe longer. This wasn't impulse. This wasn't grief. This wasn't even just greed. This was calculated, premeditated. And watching my store get gutted, I realized something. Dylan wasn't going to stop. He wasn't going to settle fairly. He was going to destroy the business if he had to, burn it down, just to make sure I got nothing. I drove home, called Linda. The mediation, I said. What do I need to know? Be prepared, Linda said. Dylan's bringing a corporate lawyer, former prosecutor. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to challenge everything, question your credibility, make you look confused, old, unreliable. I'm 70, I said, not incompetent. I know that, Linda said, and we're going to make sure the mediator knows that too. I hung up, looked at the clock. 3 days until mediation, 3 days to prepare, to get ready, to fight. I opened my laptop, started reviewing documents, evidence, every piece of proof that the store was mine. Outside, the sun was setting, another day gone, another day closer. I thought about giving up, taking whatever settlement Dylan offered, walking away. But then I thought about Tom, about 40 years, about the contractors who'd called asking when we'd reopen, about Margaret and the women offering to testify, about standing in front of that store at 6 a.m, locked out, erased. I wasn't done yet. The mediation was scheduled for 9 a.m. at Bradford and Associates Law Office, downtown, 10th floor, conference room with glass walls and a view of the city. Linda and I arrived early. She wore a dark suit, carried a leather briefcase. I wore my best dress, navy blue, the one I'd worn to Tom's funeral. Remember, Linda said in the elevator, stay calm, answer questions directly. Don't let Dylan's lawyer rattle you, and if you need a break, just say so. I nodded. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against my skirt. The conference room was cold, long table, leather chairs. A mediator, older woman, maybe 65, gray suit, neutral expression, sat at the head of the table. Dylan was already there. His lawyer sat beside him. Paul Bradford, expensive suit, silver hair, former prosecutor, Linda had said. He looked confident, comfortable. Dylan looked tired, stressed. He wouldn't meet my eyes. We sat down, Linda on my right. The mediator introduced herself, Susan Chen. No relation to Kevin at the bank, apparently, just coincidence. Let's begin, Susan said. This is an informal mediation, not a trial. Both sides will present their positions. Evidence, witnesses. Then we'll discuss possible resolutions. Mr. Bradford, you represent Mr. Walsh. Would you like to start? Bradford stood up, smooth, practiced. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a straightforward matter. My client, Dylan Walsh, is the sole heir of Thomas Walsh. Mr. Walsh, the elder Mr. Walsh, owned and operated Walsh Hardware for 40 years. Upon his death 6 months ago, ownership transferred to his son. Mrs. Henderson, he gestured toward me, was a valued employee, long-term. We don't dispute her contributions, but her claims of ownership are unfounded. The business was Mr. Walsh's. The property deed is in his name. The business license lists him as proprietor. Mrs. Henderson may have helped run the store, but she did not own it. Linda's hand touched my arm under the table. Steady, Bradford continued. My client has attempted to resolve this amicably. He's offered Mrs. Henderson generous compensation for her years of service. She's refused. Instead, she's filed motions, made accusations, claimed my client has committed fraud. These are serious allegations, with no basis, in fact. We're here today to set the record straight and to encourage Mrs. Henderson to accept a reasonable settlement so we can all move forward. He sat down. Susan looked at Linda. Ms. Martinez. Linda stood, opened her briefcase, pulled out a stack of documents. Thank you. Mrs. Henderson and Thomas Walsh were equal partners for 40 years. Not employee and employer, partners. 50-50 ownership. I have documentation to prove it. She laid out the first document, the partnership agreement. This is the original partnership agreement. signed in 1987 by both Barbara Henderson and Thomas Walsh, notarized, filed with the state business registry. It explicitly states equal ownership, 50-50, and it includes a succession clause. In the event of one partner's death, the surviving partner has right of first refusal to purchase the deceased partner's share. Linda slid the document to Susan. The mediator read it. Her expression didn't change, but she took her time. Read it twice. "This appears to be a valid partnership agreement," Susan said. Bradford leaned forward. "That document is 40 years old. Business structures change. My client's father may have signed that initially, but over time, the business evolved. Mr. Walsh became the primary operator, the sole decision maker." "The agreement was never dissolved," Linda said. "Never amended. It remained in effect until Mr. Walsh's death, and under that agreement, Mrs. Henderson is a 50% owner." Linda pulled out the next set of documents. Business tax returns, 40 years, 1986 through 2024. Every single year, these returns list Barbara Henderson and Thomas Walsh as equal partners. Partnership taxation, Form 1065, both signatures, both listed as 50% owners. She spread them across the table. Decades of tax returns, every year the same. Henderson and Walsh, 50-50. Bradford shifted in his chair. Dylan was staring at the table. Linda pulled out another document. "This is an email from Thomas Walsh to his son, Dylan Walsh, sent 8 months before Mr. Walsh's death, March of last year. I'll read the relevant portion. The store is Barb's as much as mine. We built it together. Equal partners, 50-50. When I'm gone, you need to respect that. She has rights. She has ownership." Linda placed the printed email in front of Susan. Mr. Walsh's own words, establishing the partnership, warning his son to respect Mrs. Henderson's ownership. Susan read the email, looked at Dylan. "Mr. Walsh, do you remember receiving this email from your father?" Dylan hesitated. I don't recall." "It's in your email records," Linda said. "We have your response. You wrote back, 'Whatever, Dad, I get it.'" Bradford cleared his throat. "With respect, my client's father was experiencing cognitive decline, dementia. His statements in that period may not reflect his actual intent." "That email was sent 8 months before his death," Linda said. "Before the severe decline. His doctor can confirm Mr. Walsh was still competent at that time." Linda pulled out the bank statements. "These show transfers from the business account to Mr. Dylan Walsh's personal account, $30,000 over 3 months. Mrs. Henderson did not authorize these transfers. They were made using a power of attorney that Mr. Dylan Walsh obtained when his father was no longer competent." She placed the POA documents on the table. "This power of attorney is dated 4 months before Mr. Thomas Walsh's death. At that time, Mr. Walsh had been diagnosed with moderate cognitive impairment. His physician's records show he was not competent to sign legal documents." Susan looked at Bradford. "Do you have evidence of Mr. Walsh's competency at the time he signed the POA?" Bradford didn't answer immediately. Linda wasn't done. "Finally," she said, "we have a business valuation report, commissioned by Dylan Walsh 6 months before his father's death. While Mr. Walsh was still alive, Mr. Dylan Walsh was already planning to take over the business. This wasn't grief. This wasn't confusion about ownership. This was premeditated." She placed the valuation report on the table. Susan looked at all the documents, looked at Dylan, looked at Bradford. "Mr. Bradford, do you have witnesses, documentation, anything to support your claim that Mr. Walsh was the sole owner?" Bradford opened his folder. "We have the property deed. It lists Thomas Walsh as owner." "The property, yes," Linda said, "but not the business. The partnership agreement covers business ownership, assets, inventory, goodwill, customer relationships. Mr. Walsh owned the building, but the business, Henderson and Walsh Hardware, was jointly owned." Susan nodded slowly. Bradford tried again. "We have testimony from—" "Actually," Linda said, "we have witnesses." "May I call them?" Susan nodded. The first witness was Martin Chen, our CPA. Linda had asked him to come. He walked in carrying a file box. Linda asked him to state his relationship to the business. "I've been the accountant for Henderson and Walsh Hardware since 1986, Martin said. "I've prepared every tax return, handled all financial documentation." "And how is the business structured?" "Partnership, 50-50 ownership, Barbara Henderson and Thomas Walsh. Equal partners in every legal and financial sense. Every tax return I filed reflected that. For almost 40 years, there's no question about the ownership structure." "Thank you," Linda said. Bradford didn't cross-examine him. What could he say? The second witness was Margaret, my neighbor, my friend. She walked in wearing her Sunday dress, sat down in the witness chair, looked right at Dylan. Linda asked her about her relationship with Tom. "Tom and I were neighbors for 30 years, Margaret said. "Friends. We had coffee together every few weeks, talked about gardening, life, the store." "Did Mr. Walsh ever discuss his partnership with Mrs. Henderson?" "All the time," Margaret said. "He was proud of it. He'd talk about how they built the business together, how Barb kept the finances running, how they made decisions together, equal partners." "Did he ever mention his concerns about the future?" Margaret nodded. 2 months before he died, we had coffee. He told me he was worried about Dylan, about what would happen to the store after he was gone. He said, "Margaret, make sure Barb's taken care of. That store is as much hers as mine. I'm worried Dylan doesn't understand that." Her voice wavered. She looked at me, then back at Dylan. Those were his exact words. Dylan's face had gone pale. His lawyer whispered something to him. Dylan shook his head. Susan turned to Bradford. "Do you have any witnesses, Mr. Bradford?" "No," he said quietly. "We were prepared to rely on the documentation." Susan looked at all the evidence spread across the table. Partnership agreement, tax returns, email, witness testimony. "Mr. Bradford," she said, "based on what I'm seeing here, Mrs. Henderson has a very strong case. The partnership agreement is valid and binding. The tax returns corroborate it. The witnesses support it. Your client's POA is questionable. The transfers appear unauthorized. If this goes to court, I believe Mrs. Henderson will prevail." Bradford leaned back in his chair. He looked at Dylan, had a whispered conversation. Then Dylan's lawyer tried one more time. "Mrs. Henderson," Bradford said, standing up, "let me be frank, you're 70 years old. With respect, there may be some confusion about your role in the business. You helped Mr. Walsh. You manage day-to-day operations. But ownership is different from management. My client's father—" "Excuse me." I spoke for the first time. "May I say something?" Susan nodded. "Of course, Mrs. Henderson." I stood up, looked at Bradford, then at Dylan. "I'm 70 years old," I said. "Not incompetent. I've run that business for 40 years. I know every supplier, every customer, every nail in that store. Your client hasn't stolen from a business. He's stolen from me. He forged documents while his father was dying. He emptied bank accounts. He changed the locks. He removed my name from the sign. And now he's trying to use his father's memory to justify it." My voice was steady, calm, but every word landed. "I'm not confused," I said. "I'm here to get what's mine." Bradford sat down. Dylan wouldn't look at me. Susan cleared her throat. "I think we need a break, 30 minutes. Then we'll discuss possible resolutions." We stepped out into the hallway. Linda squeezed my shoulder. "That was perfect," she said. When we came back, Susan had her legal pad full of notes. "I've reviewed everything," she said. "Mr. Walsh, I'm going to be direct. You don't have a case. The evidence overwhelmingly supports Mrs. Henderson's claim of ownership. If you proceed to litigation, you will lose, and you'll be liable for legal fees, possibly damages for the unauthorized transfers and the illegal lockout." Dylan's lawyer leaned over, whispered urgently, Susan continued. I recommend we discuss settlement options. There are 3 realistic paths forward. 1. Mrs. Henderson buys out Mr. Walsh's inherited share, 50% of the business at fair market value, approximately $200,000. 2. Mr. Walsh buys out Mrs. Henderson's share at fair market value, approximately $400,000. 3. You sell the business and split the proceeds 50-50. Dylan finally spoke. His voice was hoarse. I don't have $400,000. Then option 1, Susan said. Mrs. Henderson buys you out. I don't have $200,000 either, I said quietly. Susan looked between us. Then option 3, she said. Sell the business, split the proceeds. Or, she looked at Dylan, Mr. Walsh, you could find financing to buy out Mrs. Henderson. A business loan, use the store as collateral. Dylan and his lawyer had another whispered conversation. Long. Tense. Finally, Bradford spoke. My client is willing to agree to option 2. He'll buy out Mrs. Henderson for $400,000, but he'll need time to secure financing. 60 days. Linda looked at me. I nodded. Agreed, Linda said. With conditions. Dylan Walsh will pay Mrs. Henderson's legal fees, approximately $20,000, and he will publicly acknowledge the partnership in any statements about the business. Bradford hesitated, looked at Dylan. Dylan's jaw was tight, but he nodded. Agreed, Bradford said. Susan started drafting the settlement agreement. I sat there, looked at Dylan across the table. $400,000, fair market value for my half of the business, my 40 years. I didn't feel victorious. I felt sad. Tom would have been horrified. His son, his legacy, all of it twisted into this legal battle. This wasn't what he wanted, but I'd won. I'd fought, and I'd gotten justice. The settlement agreement took 2 hours to finalize. Linda reviewed every clause, made edits, protected me. Finally, we all signed. Dylan left without saying a word. His lawyer packed up quickly, efficient, professional. Linda and I walked to the elevator. You did it, she said. Congratulations. I nodded, but I didn't feel like celebrating. I just felt tired. In the lobby, Linda stopped. You won, Barb. You got justice. I know, I said, but Tom would have been heartbroken. His son did this. That's not your fault. I nodded. But it didn't make the sadness go away. Go home, Linda said. Rest. I'll handle the paperwork. I drove home, made tea, sat at my kitchen table in silence. For the first time in weeks, I didn't think about what came next. I just sat there. It was over. The settlement took 3 weeks to finalize. Lawyers, paperwork, Dylan securing a business loan, the bank required appraisals, documentation, proof of financing. Linda handled most of it. I just signed where she told me to sign. On a Tuesday afternoon in early November, the wire transfer came through. $400,000 plus $20,000 for my legal fees, deposited into my personal account. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the bank statement on my laptop screen. $420,000, 40 years of work, reduced to a number in an account. I thought about what I could have done if Dylan hadn't forced this. I could have kept running the store, hired someone to help, eventually sold on my own terms, or passed it to Sarah if she'd wanted it. Instead, I was 70 years old with a check and no business, but I was free, and Dylan was stuck. Sarah called that evening. Mom, did the money come through? It did. How do you feel? I thought about it. Relieved, sad. Both. That's fair, Sarah said. She was quiet for a moment. Then, Mom, I'm sorry for being so overprotective, for treating you like you couldn't handle this. I watched you fight Dylan and win. I've never seen you like that. You were incredible. I had good help, I said. You organized everything. Linda fought for me. Margaret testified. I couldn't have done it alone. But you did it, Sarah said. You stood up for yourself. You didn't back down. I'm proud of you. We talked for another hour, about the settlement, about her girls, about what I'd do next. "Are you going to retire?" she asked. "I don't know yet," I said, "but I've got options now. That's more than I had 6 weeks ago." The next day, Linda called. "Settlement's complete. All documents signed and filed. You're officially done. Dylan Walsh no longer has any claim to your partnership share." "Thank you," I said, "for everything. Send me your final invoice." "About that," Linda said, "I've been thinking. I'm waiving half my fee. Dylan's paying the $20,000, but you still owe me about $15,000 for the extra hours. I'm writing it off." "Linda, you don't have to." "I want to," she said. "What Dylan did was elder abuse, financial exploitation. I'm glad we fought it, and I'm glad you won. But more than that, Barb, you reminded me why I do this work. Keep your money, invest it, enjoy it, you've earned it." I didn't argue. Linda wasn't the type to change her mind once it was made. "Can I buy you lunch sometime?" I asked. "I'd like that," she said. "As friends, not as lawyer and client." "Friends," I agreed. Margaret came over that afternoon with coffee cake. She'd heard the settlement was final, wanted to celebrate. We sat at my kitchen table, drank coffee, ate cake. "Garden Club's been asking about you," Margaret said. "Everyone wants to know how it turned out." "I got $400,000, I said. "Dylan got debt." Margaret smiled. "Good. That boy needed to learn. He can't push people around." She poured more coffee. "We're meeting next Tuesday. You should come. Eleanor's bringing bulbs for spring planting." "I'll be there," I said. Life was starting to feel normal again. Coffee with Margaret, garden club on Tuesdays, phone calls with Sarah. But I still drove past the store sometimes, couldn't help myself. 2 weeks after the settlement, I heard through Jack Morrison, the contractor, that Dylan was struggling. Store was open, but business was slow. Customers had been loyal to me and Tom, not to the name on the sign. Dylan didn't know the inventory, didn't have relationships with suppliers. Contractors stopped coming. 3 months later, Margaret called with news. "I heard Dylan selling," she said. "Word is Ace Hardware's buying the building and the business. Corporate chain, they're converting it." I drove past the next day. Sure enough, new sign going up. Ace Hardware, red and white, generic, corporate. Dylan's BMW was gone. Store was closed. A sold sign hung in the window. I sat in my car and looked at the building. 40 years. Tom and me. Morning coffee, contractors at 6:30, helping people fix things. All of it gone. But that wasn't on me, that was on Dylan. I'd offered to buy him out, would have kept the store running, honored Tom's memory properly. Dylan chose differently, and now he'd lost everything. I heard later he'd moved out of state, couldn't afford to stay. The business loan was crushing, legal fees. He'd sold to Ace Hardware for less than half what he'd paid me. After paying off the loan, he'd walked away with almost nothing. I didn't feel vindicated, just sad. Tom would have been heartbroken. But I kept one promise to Tom, one thing Dylan couldn't take from me. With $50,000 from the settlement, I established a scholarship fund, the Tom Walsh and Barbara Henderson Skilled Trades Scholarship, for students at the local technical college, plumbing, electrical, carpentry, the trades Tom loved. The first scholarship was awarded that spring. A young woman named Maria, 19 years old, planning to study electrical work. When they announced her name at the ceremony, I stood in the back of the room and cried. This was the legacy, not the store, not the money. This, helping the next generation learn a trade, build something, fix things. Tom would have loved it. I donated Tom and my original business documents to the Town Historical Society. Photos from the grand opening in 1985, partnership agreement, that first open sign we'd painted ourselves. The Historical Society put together a small exhibit, local business history, Henderson and Walsh Hardware, Tom and me, young and hopeful, building something that lasted 40 years. The exhibit opened in December. Sarah and the girls came. Margaret, Linda, even Martin, our CPA, stopped by. People I hadn't seen in years showed up. Contractors, customers, neighbors, they shared stories, remembered Tom, thanked me for all the years of service. "You two built something special," one contractor told me. "Doesn't matter that the sign came down. What you built, the relationships, the trust, that's still here." I walked through the exhibit slowly, read the descriptions, looked at the photos, Tom and me on opening day, both 30 years old, Tom's handwriting on the back, partners 50-50 forever. Forever had an end, but it had been a good run. That evening, I went home, made tea, sat at my kitchen table. I opened my desk drawer, found the memory box, jewelry, photos, keepsakes. I took out the original store keys, the ones Tom gave me in 1985. Heavy brass, red tag that said Henderson. I placed them in the box, next to the photo from opening day, next to Tom's last birthday card to me. All the memories, all the years. Then I closed the box, put it back in the drawer. On my desk sat a new set of keys, smaller, silver, house keys, office keys, different chapter, but still mine. 3 months after the settlement, I started Henderson Hardware Consulting. Not a store, a consulting business. From my home office, I help independent hardware stores with inventory management, bookkeeping, supplier relationships, customer service training, all the things I learned in 40 years. I work from home, set my own hours, choose my clients, no overhead, no employees, no 6 a.m. openings. My first client was a small hardware store 2 towns over. The owner was 68, thinking about retirement. Didn't know how to hand off the business to his daughter. I helped him set up a partnership structure, proper documentation, succession planning, everything Tom and I should have formalized better decades ago. My second client was a young couple, early 30s, just bought a failing hardware store, didn't know where to start. I spent 3 months working with them, taught them how to negotiate with suppliers, build customer relationships, manage cash flow. They're profitable now, thriving. Word spreads in the hardware business, small industry. Everyone knows everyone. I get calls every week, stores across 3 states. Some want help with finances. Some want operations advice. Some just want someone who understands the business to talk to. I'm not wealthy, but I'm comfortable. The $400,000 from the settlement is invested, generating modest income. The consulting work supplements it. I'm not getting rich, but at 71, I don't need to. I'm working, on my terms, using 40 years of knowledge, helping people who love this business as much as I did. My granddaughters visit after school some days, Emily and Sophie. They do their homework at my kitchen table while I work in my office. Sometimes they ask what I'm doing. I explain inventory spreadsheets, supplier contracts. They mostly just nod and go back to their math. But Sophie said something last week that stuck with me. "Grandma, did you really fight someone who tried to steal from you?" Sarah had told them. Not all the details, but enough. "I did," I said. "Were you scared?" "Yes, very scared. But you won." "I got what was fair," I said. "That's not quite the same as winning, but it was enough." Sophie thought about that, then went back to her homework. Margaret and I still have coffee every Tuesday after garden club. She brings me cuttings from her roses. I help her with her bookkeeping. Small stuff, personal finances. She insists on paying me. I tell her it's free. We compromise. She brings coffee cake. We don't talk about Dylan much anymore. Sometimes she mentions hearing something through town gossip. He's living in another state, working sales again, struggling from what she hears. I don't think about him often. When I do, I mostly just feel tired. Tired of the fight. Tired of the anger. He made his choices. I made mine. We both live with the consequences. Linda and I have lunch once a month. We don't always talk about the case. Sometimes we talk about books, gardening, her rescue dogs, life. She's become more than my lawyer. She's my friend. Last month, she told me she'd taken on another elder abuse case. Woman in her 80s. Son had drained her savings. Linda was fighting to get it back. "You inspired me," Linda said. That day in mediation, when you stood up and told Bradford you weren't confused, that moment reminded me why I do this work. Did you win? I asked. Still fighting, she said, but we will. I believe her. Sarah and I talk every few days. She's stopped being overprotective, stopped treating me like I need constant help. Now when she calls, it's just to talk about her students, her girls, Mike, life. Last week she asked if I was happy. I thought about it. I'm okay, I said. The store's gone. Tom's gone. That chapter's over. But I'm building something new. It's smaller, quieter, but it's mine. That's what matters, she said. She's right. The first scholarship recipient, Maria, sent me a thank you card last month. She's in her second year now. Electrical apprenticeship program. She wrote about how much the scholarship meant, how it made technical school possible, how she wants to start her own electrical business someday. I keep the card on my desk, next to Tom's photo. This is the legacy, not the building, not the sign. This. Young people learning trades, building businesses, fixing things. Tom would be proud. I'm sharing my story because what happened to me happens every day. Adult children, business partners, caregivers. They see older people as easy targets, vulnerable, too tired to fight back. We're not, but we need to protect ourselves. Keep copies of important documents, multiple locations. Give them to someone you trust, not just family, a lawyer, a friend, someone who will protect your interests. Have a lawyer review any business succession plans. Make sure your ownership is documented, filed, protected. Don't ignore red flags. When someone starts asking too many questions about money, about documents, about control, pay attention. Trust your instincts. Build a support network. Friends, professionals you trust, people who will stand with you if something goes wrong. I had Sarah, Margaret, Linda. They made the difference. Know your rights. Elder law attorneys exist. They specialize in cases like mine. If someone's stealing from you, exploiting you, abusing their authority, there are lawyers who will fight for you. Most importantly, don't give up. When someone tries to intimidate you, wear you down, make you feel like fighting isn't worth it, that's when you need to fight hardest. Not because you're angry, but because you deserve justice. You deserve respect. You deserve what's yours. I'm 71 now. I'm consulting. I'm mentoring young business owners. I'm living on my terms. Dylan thought changing those locks would break me. Instead, it reminded me who I am. I'm Barbara Henderson. I built a business for 40 years. I fought for what was mine, and I won. The store's gone. The partnership ended, but I'm not done. I work from my home office now. Small desk by the window, computer, files, coffee mug that says, World's Best Hardware Store Owner, gift from Sarah. Joke gift. But I use it anyway. Some days I still drive past the old building. It's an Ace Hardware now. Different sign, different owners, strangers inside. But I know what I built there, and nobody can take that from me. On my desk, next to Tom's photo, I keep 2 sets of keys, the old ones, heavy brass, red tag. Henderson, the ones Tom gave me in 1985, partners 50-50 forever. And the new ones, silver, simple, my home office key, my file cabinet key, symbols of this new chapter, different keys, different life, still mine. Some days I pick up the old keys, feel the weight, remember the mornings at 6 a.m., the contractors, the coffee, the work Tom and I did together. Then I set them down, pick up the new keys, and I think, this is good too, different, but good. I'm not the woman who stood locked out of her store at 70, confused, hurt, uncertain. I'm the woman who fought back, who demanded justice, who rebuilt on her own terms. They can change the locks, but they can't change what I built. And they sure as hell can't stop me from building something new.